Does getting stronger prevent injuries? So this was a question that someone asked me, and I thought about this for a long time, and the answer is yes, but also no after a certain point. So think about it like this. You drive a Toyota Camry, okay? I don't know what the governor is on that, but, probably something around like maybe 110 miles an hour, right? Okay, so you can drive your Toyota Camry 110 miles an hour, and it doesn't accelerate very fast. It's not a particularly high performance vehicle. Now, Toyota Camry is a great vehicle. I'd love to have one. But, you know, this is very different than you driving, say, a Ferrari or a Bugatti. So you're not going to get into an accident going 220 miles an hour in your Toyota Camry. Flip side to that, you're driving a Bugatti or a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or something, and now you can crash this vehicle at 200 miles an hour. Okay, so if you're really, really weak, like to a point of, not having enough strength to perform whatever sport or activity it is that you're doing, yes, you're at an increased risk of injury. I mean, think about it. If you were I don't know, playing hockey or playing football or whatever, and you're fragile and weak, and you can't withstand the impact of playing a contact sport, yes, you're going to be at an increased risk of injury. Similarly, think about even non-contact sports. We see a lot of ACL tears and stuff like that in basketball, volleyball, even softball, stuff like that. And you see a lot of knee injuries, and if you have adequate hamstring strength and adequate, just even strength of your soleus. There's less rotation in the knee, it's more stable, and so you're less likely to get injured. You can't prevent it 100%. Even very strong people with very strong knees can blow their knee out. However, you might take a look at some of those people who are very strong and still blow their knee out and realize the fact that they're also extremely fast and powerful. So they're so strong that they can generate enough force to actually injure themselves. I don't believe this is true. This is outdated, but supposedly a tendon can handle something like 400 pounds of force, right? Now we know that tendons can obviously handle more than that because there are people that deadlift 1,000 pounds and squat 1,000 pounds. And so this study is really old and outdated. It's based on a cadaver, so it's a dead body. So let's not take that as a concrete example, but we're just going to use it as a reference point here. If your tendon had the strength to hold 400 pounds and you can only generate 300 pounds of force, you're not going to rupture that tendon. But now you can generate 400 pounds of force and that tendon can hold 400 pounds. You are right at the edge of tearing that tendon. And then now you can generate 500 pounds of force with a 400 pound tendon, and suddenly we've got a problem, okay? Anyone can get injured at any time. This is not something that's like, I don't care. People like to say things like, oh, well, drug-free athletes don't get injured. No, they certainly do. They certainly do. Hell, I had a neighbor who tore his quad tendon just cutting his grass. Welcome to being in your 50s, okay? He was pushing his mower, and I guess he hit like a hole or something like that. He took a weird step, and it tore his quad tendon off. I guarantee that guy wasn't on steroids. He was like, I don't know, 6 feet tall and maybe like 130 pounds. He was beanpole skinny, okay? So does getting stronger prevent injuries or reduce injuries? Yes, to a certain point, because if you're extremely weak, then, you're going to get injured very easily. And at the same time, as we get stronger, you're also running the risk in the opposite direction now, where you're able to produce enough force to injure yourself. If you think about it, a guy who can run a 4.340, right, and he suddenly changes directions, how much force is he putting into the ground? How much force is he putting into his connective tissues? You see these sprinters tearing hamstrings. Why? Because they're generating so much force that it exceeds the capacity of the muscle. So as you get stronger, you're also more likely to get injured. Not that you can't get injured at any weight, but when you look at powerlifting, for example, you don't see a lot of injuries in the beginners who are squatting 300, 400 pounds. But goodness, do you see a lot of injuries in the guys that are squatting 700, 800, 900 pounds? I've never seen someone tear a quad tendon squatting 135 pounds. I'm not saying that's not happened. I'm sure that's happened. I've just never seen that myself personally. But I have seen many people tear quad tendons squatting 700 and up. I've never seen a bicep tendon rupture. When someone is doing deadlifts with something, you know, like 200, 300, even 400 pounds for that matter. But I have seen it many times where guys are pulling 500, 600 pounds and tearing a bicep tendon. You know, when you think about these things logically, at some point you're so strong that you're actually running a greater risk of injury just simply due to the fact that now you're able to produce enough force to injure yourself. You know, if you thought about bones are probably at the easiest example here. So, you know, my bones and your bones are probably roughly the same regardless of, you know, strength levels. And if you're very weak and you were to punch a wall as hard as you possibly could, you most likely would not break your hand. But gosh, you know, if you're strong and you're fast and you're explosive and, you know, you've got a background in boxing and stuff like that, you could punch a wall hard enough to break your hand. Something to think about, right? So, you know, if we look at bone remodels, because it's a piezoelectric crystal, progressively loading that bone does make it stronger. But at some point, really, I think it's a Z-score, if I remember correctly. We don't really see Z-scores past 3, which is impressive in itself. That means that your bone is like 3 times harder than a normal sedentary person's bone. But if you thought about the amount of weight that someone might be lifting to get to that level, it's not really that significant. You know, I think I read somewhere that like less than 1% of men can bench press 225, okay? So that means like 99% of people can't bench press 225. We're just going to say that 225 is the magic number though, okay? So we're going to say 225 is the magic number where you'd have a Z-score of, you know, just being plain old even. We have guys that are bench pressing 600 pounds. There are guys that are bench pressing more than that in gear, you know. I think bench press is now over 1,000 pounds for guys that are wearing gear. That's still 1,000 pounds on your bones. I don't care whether or not you're wearing a bench press shirt or not. I don't care if you're wearing a band shirt. That's still 1,000 pounds on your bones. So, you know, at some point, I do think that it's almost like a bell curve. There we go. Yeah, that's how I should have started the video off. If you're at one end of the curve or the other, you're at an increased risk of injury. So if you're very weak, yes, you're at an increased risk of injury. As you get stronger, you decrease your risk. But then as you continue to go up, that risk goes back up because now you're able to produce so much force that you're capable of injuring yourself. You know, so, I mean, if you put 1,000 pounds on your back, you don't get to make mistakes. You have to stay in alignment. You know, if you get out of position, you're going to get injured. But, you know, if you got 95 pounds on the bar and you get out of position, like, you're probably not going to destroy anything really majorly. Most likely, you're not even going to get injured. It's just going to come down and you're going to drop it on the safety pins because you're smart enough to squat in a squat rack that has safety pins. Similarly, you know, if you're bench pressing 95 pounds and you can't push it back up and it lands on your chest and you're sitting there, you're pinned and you look like a dork and everyone's going to make fun of you and, you know, you're in the gym and it's embarrassing. Yeah, okay. But you drop 1,000 pounds on your chest, probably break your rib cage, smash your heart, maybe puncture a lung or something. You know, so at some point we're now getting in the opposite direction. We're getting so strong that we can now produce enough force and do things that would injure us. And that's basically the way to look at this. So just like my Toyota Camry thing, you know, if you can only go 110 miles an hour, the fastest accident you can get into is 110 miles an hour, which is still a very fast accident. You can get hurt pretty bad. But that's not like the same as you crashing at 200 miles an hour. And in fact, actually, because your Toyota Camry doesn't accelerate very fast, chances are you're not going to get up to 110 miles an hour. But, you know, if you're driving a Porsche or you're driving a Ferrari, Lamborghini, those things accelerate very, very fast. Now you can get to a very high speed in a very short distance, and you can crash that thing at 200 miles an hour. So I hope that makes sense. It's just, a logical way of trying to look at this. Does getting stronger reduce injuries? To a point. And then at some point, we're actually producing so much force that we're actually increasing our risk of injury.